All right, Gavin and everybody, good evening. Thank you for coming. Um, my name is Bob Fenster, and I'm a social studies teacher at Hillsborough High School. Tonight, I'm conducting an interview with Gavin Johnson, an HHS alumni who graduated in 2005. This live interview is a follow-up to a print interview that I published last week on my blog that really seems to have struck a chord with people. We've gotten 1,250 hits and counting, which is about almost 3 times the normal amount for a popular blog entry. So, Gavin, how you doing?
Hi. Hey, Bob, Mr. Fenster. I honestly don't know what to call you at this point. I mean, I'm 15 years out of school, but out of respect, I feel like it should be Mr. Fenster. I don't know. What do you like, Fenster, Bob?
Whatever you want. Truly, whatever. I always went back and forth about, like, when I started teaching, I kind of hated the idea of having to be called Mr. I was like, Mr. Fenster's my father. You know, that
Yeah.
that whole thing. And one of the compromises, a lot of people just call me Fenster, and I'm fine with that.
Just call you Fenster?
Yeah.
I guess I'll roll with that. All
right.
I would say to answer the question, how you doing? Today was like an angry day. I'm not gonna lie. Today was an angry day. It was one of those days that I had to just sit down and just talk to one of my friends. Jerome, I think you're in here, but we just had to I could not voice how I felt, and we talked for 2 hours, and it really helped me to put my head right. But everything that's going on, it's hard not to be angry. I'll say that.
Yeah, well, we can get into that, and I think we should.
Yeah,
but before we do, I want to thank John Framer, who is helping us out by making sure this video and audio quality feed is top notch. If you're looking for expert help with online video and webinar production, he's your man. Go to johnframer.com. That's FREMER for all your online audio solutions. All right, so. Yeah, well, we of course we started talking about this after the George Floyd situation. And you talked about it was your idea actually to do this other interview, but we of course didn't know what was going to happen in Atlanta. So I take it that's what your anger was focused on.
Yeah, I mean it's just been a long week. I feel like I've heard a lot about deaths, and I got it into my own mind. When everything started to happen, that it was probably going to get a little bit worse before it gets better, because it's going to be more acknowledgement of these things. More stories are going to be heard. People are going to look back at other stories, and it's just it's going to be flooded for a little bit. But it just seems like the blatant disregard for Black lives is it's out there, and it's very frustrating. But yes, the Rashard Brooks thing hit me a little hard today.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic and what's happening, not just in Atlanta, but all over the country, the reaction, the response to the death of George Floyd, I'm sure that you would have conversations with friends and coworkers from time to time about race and racism. So in these, and of course, in-person conversations are going to be way different than what we talk about on social media typically. Did you find, prior to this I'm talking about, did you find much defensiveness among your white friends or coworkers denying their privilege or denying that systemic racism exists? Or put another way, did they make that argument to your face?
Yeah. I would say not everyone was defensive. A lot of people did listen, but a lot of people would try and equate one experience that they had to almost all the experiences that I was talking about. Like, man, I got stopped by the cops, and things happened to me. Like I had a gun in my face at a young age. And I've definitely had a friend who's just like, yeah, well, I got a gun in my face too. And I was like, yeah, but you actually got in trouble. You did something. You got arrested. I was like, I was reaching from my glove compartment to get my insurance, and I didn't say that part. So for them, they felt justified to put a gun in my face.
All right. You said in the interview that you learned or you were taught that you have to narrate all of your actions. I am reaching for, unfortunately that one's particularly chilling because of what happened with Philando Castile, who
absolutely, yeah,
had a legal gun. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that. I mean, what happened to me was, boy, like 18 years ago, I guess, like right around when I first started driving. So it was like it was a hard reality in that respect. Like you knew it was a possibility, but like that just like solidified it that it was like it's not just a possibility; it's more likely to happen than not likely to happen.
Now, getting back to my question.
Sorry.
About the way that. I mean, I assume what you were saying is, yeah. So I've heard the same thing that, kids get treated badly by police officers. Doesn't matter what their race is. And have you noticed a change in the last week or two in the conversations you've been having? How much more woke are your white friends?
A lot more. A lot of people are waking up. Like I said before, a lot of eyes have been opened to the things that are happening. And I will say that yes, a lot of people are listening more now, and it's easier to have a dialogue, easier to have a conversation, like as opposed to before, where it felt definitely like people were asking me questions or listening to come back with an answer. There's more actual active listening about my experience and about Black people's experience as a whole.
Good. I want to jump back to our shared experience that we do have, of course, which is some time at Hillsborough High School. Mine's 7 times more than yours. 28. Well, I always used to joke when I started teaching, like when I got to my 4th year, I was like, all right, I graduated high school again. And then, and then I got to do the cycle again and again.
Yeah.
So
at this point, you're like,
get me out of here. A few years ago, I considered putting up a Black Lives Matter flag in my classroom, but I didn't. And part of the reason was I worried about the backlash. I worried about ultimately more from parents who would be told about it or on back to school night would see it. I also didn't know what the administration would say. And Hillsborough is pretty conservative on a lot of fronts. Now, before I continue, to be fair to the school administration, I didn't ask them. I didn't broach the subject, so I don't know for sure. But I know, Black Lives Matter didn't exist when you were in high school, so I'm asking sort of an impossible question to some extent. But I'm wondering what you would have felt if you saw something like that, or just images of Black people on the walls, as opposed to like what you would typically see of a bunch of white guys.
Yeah.
I mean, how would that make you feel as a student in a classroom? Would that make you feel more welcome? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's difficult. It's a little difficult for me to answer because I feel like where I was in high school is definitely a different, definitely a different mindset. I don't know. I feel like I might have responded in the way of like, what's this white man got doing with his flag? Does he actually really care? Like, I don't know. I think I might have been a little bit more guarded, but like right now, I of course, more than ever, I guess because we didn't have that movement at that time. Yeah. But having a movement, having something to look to, I think now if I were a Black kid in the high school, I'd feel like that's a haven. That's a place I want to be. Because look, I love all my friends. I love my white friends, but there was just certain things we just didn't identify on. That's obvious. And so, I talked a lot with my family, and I would always talk, with, the couple of Black friends that I had and find shared experience. But like, there wasn't too much in the administration ways that we felt like there was people that we would go to. Like I went to my choir teacher with a lot, but that's because we we mess with the arts a lot. And, I talk to you from time to time when we were doing variety shows and stuff like that. But I think that would be important for kids of color to see now.
I have on a separate screen, I've got the chat watching us about 30 seconds behind, but Brian Humphrey is urging me to hang the Black Lives Matter flag, and
Yeah.
I just want to let him know it's been ordered. It'll be up on the wall the first day that we're back.
Yes, love that.
All right. Now, when you were in social studies classes or English classes when you were in high school, and racism came up, or I don't know if you actually read Huck Finn or you did, which books, or in history class, did you find that the non-Black students would like either sneak a peek to see what your reaction was, or literally just turn and stare at you?
Oh yeah, there's absolutely those moments of just like, something would be said, or like, there's an N-word in the book, and like it would just be like, okay, like what's happening? Like, I'm like, oh God, relax, y'all. But I do recall like a very specific instance, and for the life of me, I can't remember what book it was, but in 8th grade, I remember in my English class, we were reading a book that was racially charged, had a lot of like slurs and stuff like that. And I remember my teacher being like, okay, so, there's a lot of racially sensitive stuff in this book. So while we're reading out loud, please like skip like, the stuff, those words. And I was like, all right. And then I would say she was doing reading out loud, and she probably skipped over the word nigger twice and then just started ripping it. I was like, well, yeah. And I was just like, am I losing it? And then I remember people like turning and looking at me, and I was like, okay, I'm not losing it. All right, she actually is doing this, but like skipped over things like Peckerwood. And I was just like, what in the good hell? But anyway,
well, I think
I
think that's, that's that kind of thing where you might have, I don't, let's not give the person's name, but
I don't even remember.
The person, it might have been, she was clearly well-intentioned, and sensitive up to a certain degree, but then forgot, or no,
and I did address it. I addressed it after class, and I was like, I want you to know, like, you definitely did this. And she was like, I don't think I did. I was like, no, okay, so I'm going to say I know you did this. I was like, sorry to even leave any doubt. But yeah, it became it became a little bit of a thing. We weren't feeling each other for a little bit, but we made it through. I'm here.
Okay. Well, I think I might have a question or two that touches on the idea of white fragility. I don't want to go there right now, but I mean that's something that, I think anybody who's watching needs to be, I hope they're, they might just be watching because they like you, they're friends with you, but I hope that most of the people who are watching are kind of, who are going to be allies in anti-racism if they aren't already. And the idea is there's a difference between not being racist and then actively being anti-racist. And one of the things that latter category entails is calling stuff out and, not being silent, not letting it go, and making people uncomfortable. And, and at the same time, also, like you started with, like listening. When a Black person tells you you did something that was offensive.
Yeah. Don't gaslight us.
I didn't do
like,
that.
Well, was that really racist? I'm like, yes, it was racist. And piggybacking off of that, I think what you were saying as far as like being not racist, I kind of feel like is more about your world and how you treat it, and being anti-racist is seeing the world as a whole and making sure that other people around you are being anti-racist as well. Because you can not be racist in your world, and you can like think everybody's equal, but you also have to take a look at the world around you and notice that not everybody thinks like that, and you should call it when you see it.
Yeah. All right. I think this is my last question about HHS, but I'm going to go one more. And this one is also may or may not be something that you can answer, but I'm going to throw it at you anyway. A number of years ago, I'm not familiar with the timeline here, but someone coined the phrase the achievement gap, which was that we have primarily white and Asian students who are scoring high on their SATs, taking AP classes, and Black and Hispanic students are not. People who are basically anti-racist advocates have argued that achievement has the wrong tone, or sends the wrong message. That a lot of this comes from a lack of opportunity. So opportunity gap is a phrase. I heard another one and I'm blanking on what it was. I liked the other one even better. But anyway, Black students are disproportionately represented in honors and AP classes at Hillsborough High School, and they always have been. In the 28 years that I've been teaching, and most of the 27 years, most of that I've taught honors and or AP classes. I'd say 24 of those years. I have never had more than 2 Black students in a class, and I think that wasn't even one of the honors classes. So I think at most I either have 0 or 1 Black student in a class. This year, I think I had, I'm sorry, I'm blanking. I either had 2 or 3 total out of 5 classes. So there are several possible explanations for this. I mean, Black people are only 5% of the school. So if it's 25 kids in the class, 2 would be slightly disproportionate. But anyway, our numbers are not good. Based on your own observations, do you think there are any, first I want to address this, are there any things within the Black community or within Black students and the Black culture, for lack of a better word, that might dissuade them from taking the classes? Like you might have typically when I recommend students for honors, it's sheerly about the numbers. Did they get an A? They're in, that's all it is. I'm not doing anything proactive. Yeah, right. But there are students who self-select out of that. So anyway, that was a really long-winded opening, but I wanted to give the background for anybody who doesn't know it.
Yeah, I mean, like I think we talked about it just really quick before about like if I was in AP classes, and at that point, like that's not where my mind was at all. Like I wasn't thinking about AP classes. I felt my grades were good enough. I had like a 3.6, and then like I was like a pretty well-rounded kid. I played football, I did musicals, so I was just like AP classes sounds like more work. No, thank you. But I do feel like such a difficult question to answer. I feel like there's a part of me that when we're young, we didn't invest in ourselves as much as like, it's one of those things. If I knew what I know now, dear Lord, I would have invested in myself in so many different ways. But also there was that part of being in high school and ego and what was kind of cool and what was not. But I mean, I have to say, like, if you have the opportunity to take an AP class, don't pass it up. I feel, because it is one of those things where Black people always had to do more to get on an even playing field. So anything you can do to get a leg up, I would definitely encourage. And once again, I feel like this is something that's going to change, but like there might have been a bit of a stigma with it, if I'm being honest. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's there, I mean, I left out, I think the even more obvious thing, which is that there is internalized, I mean, well, that would be an internalized situation, but I mean, there is prejudice within teachers. There's probably the only time I ever quote George W. Bush, because it's a great line, but the soft bigotry of low expectations. That when we have teachers who don't expect much out of students, and maybe they don't know why they don't expect it. They're not consciously racist, but they're implicitly racist, that they are not, they're not as demanding. They allow that to, not failure, but they don't push the way that they might.
Setting the bar low for kids of color. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the good news is that our former superintendent actually made this a priority, trying to change the opportunity gap issue, and slowly making some inroads on that front. I mean, it's challenging for a variety of reasons, and I don't know that you fix it by automatically promoting people in 10th grade to 11th, to all of a sudden jump into honors classes when maybe they haven't had. I mean, we need to start even at a lower age is the point.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It needs to start when the kids are young. Yeah. And I just feel, I don't know. I don't know what can be done to make the people of color feel more invested in their school, but it always felt like, not in a bad way, but I didn't completely identify, obviously.
I just have to. I'm seeing some comments from Elaine Tubin, and I'm hoping she can expand on it. And if there isn't like time, maybe we can have a further conversation. But she was taking
Sure.
exception to my the term the achievement gap, and saying that it was what was the phrase she used, that it's fake race science. And what I was my rejoinder, you got to mute that.
Yeah. Sorry.
my
I was trying to see what you were
rejoinder
saying.
was that what's not fake is that we don't have black kids taking these classes, and for whatever reasons, like that's the problem. That's what I was referencing, and that's just factual. That, I mean, there's no I'm not sure what you're taking exception to, but so please let me know. I do want to better understand. But let's move on to for now to a different subject. And I lied. This is still a high school question to some extent. You felt in the interview that you weren't taught enough about atrocities committed against black people in American history, especially in the 20th century. And you brought up Tulsa, the Tulsa Massacre of 1921, which was the first time that planes were used to target civilian targets in the United States. Only it was racist white people bombing the wealthiest black people in the country. Teaching that story is powerful on a number of levels, since students would see black people with huge degrees of success, something that we don't often see at all unless they're celebrities. But one concern so-called woke educators have is actually depicting people of color so frequently as victims. That's something that, same thing with Native Americans. I mean, I felt like when I looked at every textbook, it's like there's a paragraph on Native American culture, and then they were killed, and so there is this, there's a concern, a double concern. There's a concern about what it does to black students who are, who might see atrocity, see themselves as victims or see themselves depicted as victims, or also non-black students seeing it as oh, they're the powerless black people again, sort of thing.
Right.
So what do you think that's a valid concern? Is the question.
To an extent, yeah. I mean, you say you don't want to see ourselves as victims, but I feel like that's all we've seen. I was like, what we haven't seen is the success. Like, we haven't seen the awesome things that like built like Tulsa and Rosewood and these self-sufficient places of black excellence. And I didn't know about Tulsa until college. A lot of people didn't know what Tulsa was until a couple of weeks ago. Right. It was buried in our history. It was buried in Oklahoma's history up until like 1995 or something like that. So I feel like if we were taught that there is black excellence and it was taken away from us, as opposed to focusing more on the victims, or like, how did people react to it after? What happened to these black people? How did it affect these black people? Because like with Rosewood, that happened in Florida, those houses were burnt down. There was no compensation, nothing. And those people did not come back to that area. They had no money. And then they went from being self-sufficient and being in an excellent place to literally the bottom of the barrel again after they were able to build something up after slavery. So I feel like seeing those successes as a group, and not like an individual, not like Martin Luther King, who we totally rewrite his history now, but like we're like, oh, we love him. I was like, he was on
up until 1965. Up until 1965. After Selma, nothing happened.
Yeah. Like, oh yeah, he was a great guy. He was on the FBI's top 10 list. They didn't love him back then. So we get taught, like individuals, Jackie Robinson, all these things, to see a community that really thrived like that, I think would be an amazing experience. And like, talk about that more. And if you like, then we can talk about the atrocity and how it happened and how people moved away and how that area changed and how it affected those people. I think it,
I think that's really good. I mean, we in the last 2 years, I've radically changed how I teach the Reconstruction period. And that's pretty much, you described to a T. This is it's almost the same story. If you look up Mitchellville, for example, what happened, like starting in 1863, they referred to it as an experiment. The experiment was the idea that they were allowing black people to have self-determination and to create their own communities and their own governments. And there was nothing experimental about it. It was just giving human rights to people. And it was hugely successful until the worst president in the history of the country, well, up until 2017, the worst president in the history of the country, actually, Andrew Johnson totally, ruined it. But I mean, the point is like that teaching the heights of it, then teaching the atrocity is, I think, more valuable than just, there are other so-called race riots, which is like the stupidest name, because usually it's white people killing black people.
It's a massacre.
Police,
like name it correctly. It's a massacre.
You're right. Thank you for that. My brain slipped there. You're absolutely right. No, I mean, like the massacres are worth knowing, of course, but at some point, like I when I was doing this project that I was working on, I looked up various terms. It was either race riot or massacre in American history, and Wikipedia had a list that was like 150 long, and 95% of them were the police in Memphis went on a killing spree, and and it's just at some point, unless you have the resources to teach what life was like before, it may not be as but picking and choosing representative examples would be a good idea. Now,
absolutely.
In our interview, we talked about the videos, about the use of video. We have video, of course. If there were no video for George Floyd, we wouldn't probably be having this conversation, or the situation wouldn't, I don't think, would have exploded the way it did. And we do have video for, from what happened yesterday as well. You said in the interview that technology is going to play a huge part in this movement because our words aren't enough. The saddest part of this is that we had video of Philando Castile, of Laquan McDonald, of Walter Scott, and in none of those cases,
Eric Gardner. Right.
And I think actually Walter Scott, I'm not sure. I thought I fact checked this, but I thought I read something today that Scott's that went the right way. But two-part question. Why do you think George Floyd was the tipping point for so many black people? And why was his death the tipping point for so many white people?
It's a good question. Because I don't, there's part of me that says, I don't know, because I've been watching black people die for years. I was like, what's different now, white people? I will say that there is a complete disregard for life in what happened in George Floyd's video. The stark difference of someone who is clinging to their life and someone who has their hands in their pocket and just looking dead into the camera and not giving a single blank. I think my parents are watching. About his life. Completely, the complete disregard. 8 minutes long. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Like, it was probably one of the most painful things I've ever watched. Especially when you kill someone by your hands. Like, this wasn't like a split second gunshot. This was, he said he couldn't breathe. He was moving. He was trying to fight a little bit, but the other two officers were there. He said he couldn't breathe. Then it just kept on decreasing and decreasing and decreasing until it was just, he was there lifeless. And that will never leave my brain for as long as I live. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I'm happy people are here, but we've been here for a very, very long time. And stick around. We got some work to do.
Now, in the interview, you also addressed the question about whether you feel any responsibility to help change people's hearts and minds. And you said that you didn't feel a responsibility, but you were still going to try, particularly if you can make more white people allies. Now, there's a ton that's been written and some of it's in contradiction with itself or with other versions of it. But on the subject of what makes a good ally, what's your take? And the second part of that is like, what should, or more specifically, what do you see? And we talked a little bit about it already, but what do you see white allies doing other than the hashtag, whatever, like posting memes on Black Lives Matter?
Yeah. For me, I'm trying to get a scope on this whole thing. This is such a huge undertaking of what's happening. We're trying to reconstruct our country. Education. We're in the infancy of this. Education. Learn what you can now, because there is so much to know. There's so much to know. I myself have educated myself a good bit, but I'm still learning so much. It is just in the DNA of this country. So like, know why every part of our society has racism in it. Whether it be the legislature, the real estate, I feel like people have to know the base of these things to move forward to do something about it. Like, I'm trying to educate myself a little bit more on law, just so we can change them and know exactly what I'm voting for. There's been so many times where I've looked at laws and I'm like, woo, jargon. And now I'm really trying to get an understanding of that and really educate myself on that. I think that's a good place to start. And I'll say that again, a good place to start. We got some time. We also have to register to vote. I mean, I've been voting since 2004. I tried to get Bush up out of there with Kerry, but I sent in my absentee stuff the other day. I'm hoping, obviously November is where we get started.
And in fact, if you get a chance, yesterday I listened to Stacey Abrams was interviewed on Mark Maron's show.
I'm seeing no one's comments, by the way. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just going to say that right now. I'm seeing no one's comments.
They're there, and there's some controversy, but mostly. I mean, everybody loves you. But anyway, Mark Maron's show WTF. She just did an interview. She did it on election day when, in Georgia, again, in huge problems with voting, particularly, strangely enough, in Black communities or majority minority communities. And
look at that.
I have to say, I was a little skeptical of her based on what I saw as her resume, but after listening to that conversation, I cannot imagine a better qualified, more astute person to lead the charge. I mean, she's done a lot of work with voter registration, but now doing a lot of work with voting rights as well. And of course, as we know, she's on the short list for the vice presidency. So, which brings us to Joe Biden. I've heard three theories, and of course, Black people are not a monolithic group. They're comprised of individuals of a variety of different perspectives, but we talk demographics when we talk political elections, or we talk elections. I've heard three theories about why Black voters came out in such strong support for Joe Biden in the Democratic primaries. One, his ties to Joe Biden, his ties to Barack Obama, since he was his vice president.
That's what Joe Biden would say. Joe Biden's ties to Joe Biden.
A little slip. A desperate desire to end the Trump presidency, meaning that the perspective was they made the conclusion, many Black voters made the conclusion that he has the best chance to win. Not that he's our favorite, but he's the front runner, so let's go with him. Or there's the third argument, which is that the more progressive left candidates like Sanders and Warren may be to the left of where a lot of Black people are. Black people historically, for a long time now, have voted 85 to 90 some odd % for Democrats over the last 30 years or so. But
Yeah.
are they maybe not as progressive as I know you're not the black spokesperson, but I'm wondering what your perspective is.
I mean, I'll speak for some. I'll speak on what I know and speak on my experience. To those three things you said, his ties to Obama, anybody but Trump, and maybe not yet. Maybe not as liberal as we think. True, all of them. I would say all of them are technically true. I feel like, for me, I was a Bernie guy. I was on that train. But my parents were kind of been on Biden's side, and there's this feeling that the Democratic Party does more for Black people than the Republican Party, and it's kind of like just go with the horse that we have right now. And it's just because now the Republican Party has just shown its ass. They've shown themselves to be racist. So where do we go? Like, literally, you can do the minimum on the Democratic side, and a lot of people are going to vote. You could say, Black people are cool. Like, all right, yeah, you got my vote. But no, we have to demand more. We have to demand better. I assume I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. I can't look at Trump anymore. I can't. It hurts my heart. But God, I don't know. Biden needs to show me a lot more. I was like, we get him in there, but we hold him accountable.
Right.
We hold him accountable on every end of it, from top to bottom. Hold him accountable.
Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah. There's nothing that says, I go back and
once he's in, it's done. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Right, but there's nothing that says that you have to be wholly supportive of a president. You think they're the best choice of what's there, and then, as you said, you hold them accountable. If that includes protesting in front of the White House, that's what you do. If there's inaction on important issues.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to butcher this James Baldwin quote, but what is it? He says, "I love my country, and that's why I reserve the right to criticize her." Basically paraphrase, but it's like, you know what? I was like, I'll vote for you, but that doesn't mean like I'm just like, cool, man, get out there and be somebody. No, I'm gonna hold you accountable. This is why we voted for you, so you could represent us,
right, in
what we want. So that's where I'm at with that.
All right, now many of us hope that, and you've alluded to this, that that a switch has genuinely flipped in our society. That people, that there are more people, not everybody, but of course, but there are more people who are really serious about doing something about the inequities of systemic racism. But the cynical and maybe even realists among us are concerned that once the pandemic is over and people have sports and Broadway's back and other things that they can do outside of their homes without having to worry about getting sick, that for a lot of people, and I'm talking about white people here, I don't think this. I don't think.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to change the sentiment.
I think we know which on this now.
But that it will have been a little more than a gesture. So I mean, I guess, do you have to brace yourself if you buy that? You said it feels different, right? If you buy that it genuinely feels different, do you also have to brace yourself for that disappointment if it goes, if it turns out, oh crap, it's that again, it's like it's receding.
Mm-hmm. I think Black people got really good at not being shocked. I will say that we've gotten really good at not being shocked. So there definitely is a, I guess I'll call myself like an optimistic skeptic. Am I optimistic about what's coming? Do I see it? I talk about it. Like, I was like, I'm trying to talk it into existence. I talk to my Black friends and talk to my folks and talk to my sister. And I'm just like, something's different, right? It's different this time, right? Like, it is. Yeah. And then I'll lay in bed and be like, what happens when basketball comes back? I was like, what? Like, there is a part of me that is definitely apprehensive. But I have said to a few of my friends that the world is happening the way it needs to happen right now. 2020, I know we say clear, everyone's like clear vision 2020. It's going to be our year. 2020 is exactly what it needs to be. Unfortunately, and I'm so sorry, coronavirus is what it is. And I'm sorry for the people that have lost loved ones to it. But I do feel like a huge part of this movement is the fact that people have to sit down and listen. You got no choice. You have to see it. And it's the first time because people haven't been able to just go about their lives in the same way. You have to sit with your thoughts. You have to be a little uncomfortable for a minute and really take it for what it is. And in that respect, I'm grateful that the world is happening. And also, God, I don't know how he still has so much support. He's like, this is going to help get him out. And this is going to help get Trump out. Because he's handled Corona terribly. He's handled race relations terribly. So I feel like this year is shaping up the way it needs to be. And moving forward, we have to kind of work things on a small scale. I'm definitely apprehensive, but I'm going to do my due diligence to keep everybody on board. I'm going to say, hey, we're a month in, white people. How we doing? How we feeling? Let's go. Keep it up.
Well, so just as the parallel question, I mean, I originally wrote it as an everybody question, and then on the fly switched it to white people. I mean, do you have a concern that that other Black people? I mean, obviously you are committed. You have the determination. Are you worried that some of the that Black allies are going to drop, not drop the, just not continue with this sense of urgency?
I mean, it's going to be almost impossible to avoid. I feel like a dip in this. I feel like obviously there's going to be a little bit of a receding in the tide for a minute, but everyone privately has to do the work. I'll say that you're going to have to do the work, and you don't have to show me on Instagram every day. I don't need that. We don't need that. As far as Black allies, there's always a part of me that is just like, Black people don't owe you a damn thing. Like, if they want to be silent on this, damn it, we've earned it. Like, we don't have to speak if we don't want to. This is a problem that we've been trying to solve, but it's a white problem. That's what this is. Like, we're in the crosshairs of the problem.
Right.
Hate being in there, but the problem isn't us. And if Black people don't want, like, I don't fault Black people if they don't want to speak on it. Like, like I said, there's been days where I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I don't owe anybody a damn thing. And I'll just be walking around my apartment just steaming. But if there is a little bit of a fall off, so be it. But this is impossible to ignore. Black people will stay diligent and stay angry. We're here. We're not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. We've been screaming it for years, and now we need a couple other voices to scream with us.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly, I definitely take your point. That it ultimately is the problem that white people need to fix, mm-hmm. but we wouldn't be seeing what we're seeing if not for hundreds of thousands of heroic Black people who are standing up and just saying, who are saying, not anymore. I mean, it's not like that's what the movement was. I mean, it's what the movement's always been, but just like Emmett Till and before Emmett Till, other things that sparked the civil rights movement, there are unfortunately things that do serve as an impetus to increase attention and increase involvement. And so, obviously, hopefully lots of people stay involved and focused on this.
Yeah. Well, right. I'll say this as well before we move on. I mean, with this, we're both going to have to pick each other up. People are going to get tired. This is a marathon. This isn't and it's not a sprint. So people are like, if you get tired, take a break, take a rest. But someone pick them up. we got to keep moving together. Like it's going to be one hand feeding the other with this one. And I feel like that's how we keep this movement strong, keep it moving. People are going to get tired, but you have to stay diligent, know the focus, see the long term, and set up plans to, in the short term, to get to that goal. I'll say that's it.
Thank you. All right, so now you got any questions for me?
Ooh, yeah. Let me go find them. 1 second. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. All right, so there it is. So for me, I said it's been 15 years since I've been at the high school. Has the climate changed? How has it changed, and if at all, has it?
Honestly, I'm assuming you're talking about race relations in that question.
Race relations. I don't know, like the demographics anymore. Like, has that changed at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A surge in terms of demographics. We've had a surge in South Asian population. I mean, to something like 25% of the school is now Indian or Pakistani or it's that significant. And in my honors and AP classes, it's about 60% Indian and other South Asian students of South Asian descent. And in terms of the experience for Black students, it's impossible for me to say. I unfortunately have so few of them. I think that there is, undoubtedly what happens in the hallway and in the locker rooms, that sort of thing is always going to be something that, there's always going to be a seamier side to, to what I don't get to hear or see necessarily. I mean, there's definitely an increased awareness on these issues. But then, we've done surveys and you see students on social media, Black students on social media who decry the fact that the school doesn't do anything about racial incidents. And, so there is that perspective that sadly I'm largely not privy to. And it's tough, like just speaking in terms of when I do have 1 or 2 Black students in a class and the topic of racism comes up, I don't want to I'm not going to stick a microphone in somebody's face and tell me, speak for the Black people, tell us, that
how you feeling?
Yeah. And they often, unfortunately, more often than not, I would say don't feel comfortable. I mean, I've had some conversations, of course, with students privately, and but they don't tend to want to speak to students who maybe they feel would be hostile. On the bright side, though, it used to be. I compare it to there's a significant evolution in the school when it comes to LGBTQ issues where there used to be, if I wanted to have a debate about gays and same-sex gays, really it was always gays in the military, gays and lesbians in the military. 25 years ago, there'd be a handful of girls and 1 boy. It was always just one. Who would be on what I see as the correct side. And it's in a similar way been the same thing about affirmative action, but I've seen a change on that in the last couple of years. I'm generalizing, but there's more opposition to affirmative action from the Asian students than there is from the white students. Where it used to be the white students were universally against it, or I'd have the 1 kid, So I'm a rambling, meandering answer, but that's
right. No, honestly, that's great. And honestly, I saw some photos of Black Lives Matters rallies in and around Hillsborough, which I mean, the youth, I feel like the youth is going to play a huge part in this, and I am proud to see that. I'm happy to say that I was shocked on that one. Did not see that coming. I was very happy to hear the support. Now it's some of those kids might be having.
It's a parallel. It's a parallel. Like if you look on like I'm a member, you wouldn't know it by looking at me, but I'm a member of the Hillsborough Moms or Mom to Mom Facebook page. And you have the people who you would expect who say we should be colorblind or that, there's no such thing as white privilege.
Kiss my ass.
But
sorry. I'm so tired of hearing that, but go ahead.
The amount of people, and not just people of color, but the amount of people who are speaking, in line with the types of things that we've been talking about, far outnumbers them. And I'm sure that's going to be, we're going to see more. I'm going to see more of that in the fall. And especially if I can get my, the racism in the USA class elective that I am trying to get.
Love that. Yes.
So I'm sure those kids will be taking it for the right reasons, and that will be productive.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So I guess my second question is, as far as the Black community goes, Black Lives Matters is not a controversial statement in our households.
Right.
We're pretty much all on the same side as that one. I am curious to know, have you had to have any difficult conversations with any family members or some close friends? Because I'm curious to know what that experience is like, because obviously we're angry, but we're all kind of pushing in the same direction. I'm interested to hear about the push and pull. My
17-year-old daughter went to a rally today.
You're all here to say both.
Yeah. She's been arrested for protesting, not for Black Lives Matter, but for on the immigration, on the separation at the borders issue. She got arrested in Newark for that.
Oh wow.
My wife and shares most of my most political beliefs. Probably is further to the left than I am on some things. So in terms of family, no. I mean, I haven't had a conversation yet with my parents about it. My parents are liberal Democrats, like more, the traditional kind of liberal Democrats.
Gotcha.
And growing up, my mother would do certain things that I knew were racist, not in a malignant way, but things that were implicit racism and the like. And I had to have I had heart-to-hearts with her about that. But I think that, she's a news junkie, so I cannot imagine that she hasn't been similarly affected, that so many white liberals, for lack of a better, or even white moderates, and some white conservatives too, have been, so affected by what they've seen. I'm actually going down to spend, I don't know how long, with my parents. They're having some issues that I need to go down there for. So that conversation is going to happen. Excited. I know you love your parents, but do you want to live with them now?
No, I'm a grown man. They love me too. They would not want me there.
Exactly.
Yeah, we got about 4 or 5 days that we got.
That's about it, right? My visits are usually 4 days. This might be more like 4 weeks or so. But real quick on the other part of it, I have had friends, Facebook friends mostly, oftentimes people I haven't even met, who are not where I'd like them to be, and so I'm doing the best I can to find, like, that there's that detector of, is this person honest, or is this person sincerely are they willing to learn? Are they willing to listen? Or are they coming with an agenda? Or, if they're a Trump type person, I'm probably not friends with them at this point. But the other people, there are people who certainly, who maybe react defensively to the idea of white privilege. And so having the conversation about, and reframing it to help them see, I read a Black educator suggested this as if you're in a room of people, to have, how many of you in the last week have had to strategize how to avoid sexual assault. And of course, you know, and if she phrased it in a number of different ways, but it would be something that the women, almost every woman in the room would be like, oh yeah, of course. You know, I had to think about what I was wearing. I had to think about, you know, like because of what society tells them, or I had to put my keys in between my hands. I'm like, well, that's male privilege. Do you not, you know, and almost anybody would be able to see that I have never once in my life had to worry about being sexually assaulted. You know, I also never have to worry. I get nervous when I get pulled over by a police officer, but the things that you have gone through never even crossed my mind. And so when you break it down to examples like that, you start to find out a little bit more about a person, about how defensive they're going to get. And at some point, I think I do write some of those people off, and I just don't talk to them anymore because they're not willing at this point in time to have that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can be exhausting. I mean, I've definitely had a couple friends who, I mean, I had like one or two trolls that just kept on all caps, like all lives matter. I'm just like, I don't even know who you are. Delete. But yeah, I definitely had some interesting conversations with some people. But it's always, I guess, trying to come from a place of relating. How can you make it personal to them?
Right.
So it's more understandable because they may not be seeing it on a macro scale, but if you can at least some kind of way put it in terms that they can understand or relate to, or, you know, just even like feel that frustration, nerves, sadness, anger, you know, you can try and put it in like that. But let me see here. Last question I have for you is I feel like I was always able to talk to you honestly when I was in high school, and you carried on a lot of great relationships with kids after they graduate. And I would say, what would you say to a kid now at Hillsborough High School who's having difficult discussions at home with family if they were to come to you with that? Because I think a lot of kids, from what I'm hearing, the youth is more on our side than, you know, maybe 50 plus, 60 plus, whatever. But the youth is definitely on our side more, and I feel like maybe some of those parents are going to have a hard time, and it might come up in Hillsborough, you know.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, it relates to the last answer I was giving to some extent. I mean, I can disassociate myself from a Facebook friend who I've never met. You know, it's a lot harder to do that with a family member, especially, you know, an immediate family member. I mean, it's so difficult. I mean, you know, I'm sure I have students who have like overtly racist parents. The kids aren't, the students themselves aren't racist, and, you know, and they're maybe just biding their time. And, you know, like when it came to just
can't wait to get to college.
Right. You know, that I don't have to be surrounded by this toxicity anymore. I mean, I felt that way to some extent in, you know, whenever the subject of Israel would come up with my mother, as an example. And ultimately it came down to the point where I was like, I laid down the law of we're not talking about this subject. I love you. I want to have a relationship with you, but, and, you know, and
we're never going to meet on this.
Yeah. And although that's not a great solution, you know, in terms of like family and parents, especially, you know, that's a tough one. I mean, I ultimately, I guess I would just say, you know, you do your best to be patient. You try to use every tool in the toolbox and broach different situations. I mean, you know, how rough are these conversations? Is the family member saying that George Floyd had it coming? You know, I mean, is he like that that woman who's, you know, dredging up something that happened 20 years ago?
Just bringing up his rap sheet and stuff. Yeah,
right. Like utterly irrelevant to what occurred. But like, if it's that toxic of a response, I mean, I don't know that there's anything you can do, but I'd like to think that a lot more people are willing to listen and pay attention. So counsel patients, give them some tools. That's what I'm hoping to do. I mean, I'm doing it. I did a miniature version of this new course that I'm trying to teach in like just in a week with my sophomores, and the students who were, you know, who were basically inspired by what's happened, I think I'm pretty confident that they're trying to use those arguments and those readings and share them with people and just try to get more awareness that way. It's not we can't change everybody, obviously, but the more people we can impact, the better.
Right. I feel you. Well, I mean, those are the only questions I have.
Well, we're at an hour, so I mean, I think we kind of nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, we did it. Well done.
You feeling good? You feeling good?
I feel good. I mean, I wouldn't mind having another conversation, but we could talk about that offline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. We I don't know what we topped out at, but we still have 60 people watching right now.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you guys for coming in and listening.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And the dialogue is hugely important. The listening is really important, and the sharing. There were a few comments that someone took exception to a few things that I said, or the way that I said them, and I want to look at that. I'll look back at what I said and try to reflect on that, and hopefully have more conversations about that sort of thing. And this is a process, and
absolutely.
And I think that I want to thank you again, because I think that obviously people were hungry to learn more. And 1,200 people can't be wrong. You have a lot of friends. You're a popular guy, but you're not that popular.
No, but I'm really glad. I'm glad people are listening.
Great.
At the end of the day, and I'm going to do what I can, and take rest when I need to. Like I said, we got a long road ahead of us, but there's things that are happening. It's feasible. Yeah. Don't think it's impossible. Like, we got this. Stick around. We're going to do it.
Thanks, Gavin. And thanks again to John Framer for broadcasting this for us. That's John, FREMER.com. Good night, everybody, and hopefully that we'll see you again sometime on this topic with even better news, or with better news in the future. Good night.
Yes. Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.